Mexico and the Philippines carry similar cultural values. For instance, they share the same religious beliefs, the same taste in selective cuisines, and each language have similar words and meanings. They share similar characteristics in their culture, and most people do not know the reason for it. Individuals know certain parts of their connection, like the colonization of the Spaniard conquistadors in the early 1500s to the late 1700s of both countries. However, they do not know how their experience together expand further, and the influence of each community are woven through historical events. For instance, during the colonial periods, New Spain, Mexico, had important ties with the Pacific nation. There were incidents that caused migration between the two countries, and these migrations acted as vessels for cultural exchange and influence. In addition, after World War II, both groups experienced exploitation of labor in the United States, forming close relations due to the movements initiated through the two. Mexicans and Filipinos have shared cross-cultural connections through colonization, historical experiences, and cultural similarities that act as a bridge between these two communities in the United States. As a result, a community located in San Diego called the Mexipinos was eventually created, and it represents the close relations between these two groups that have expanded throughout centuries.
First, let's see some similarities in the history of colonization in Mexico and the Philippines. The Aztecs, who was a nomadic tribe in northern Mexico, emerged as a dominant force in central Mexico during the 15th century. In 1519, Hernán Cortés, who was a Spanish conquistador, was sent to the town of Tabasco to get new land, resources, and spread Christianity. By taking control of the empire and spreading diseases like smallpox, Cortés and his army overthrew the Aztec empire by force and murdered thousands of nobles during the ritual dance ceremony. After his victory, Cortés built Mexico City on its ruins. Similar to colonization in Mexico, Philippines was also colonized by Spanish Empire. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan, Portuguese explorer, discovered the Philippines, which he claimed the island for the King of Spain. Colonization began when a Spanish explorer, Miguel Legazpi, arrived from Mexico and formed the first European settlements of San Miguel and Cebu. The Spanish brought political unification to most of the Philippines islands and influenced the locals with Western practices and Christianity.
Under the rule of the Spanish Empire, these two countries became linked across the Pacific. The contributing factors that established the link was that of mass deportation in Mexico, of vagrants and soldiers, and the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. Mexicans of mid and high-class petitioned for unruly family members to be deported to the Philippines as a form of social punishment. The Spanish Emperor and the Manila governor also requested men from Mexico to establish a military that was lacking in the Philippines. The Manila-Acapulco trade that was established in 1571 was a trade route that directly connected the two countries. This trade route and the mass deportations of Mexicans contributed to the sharing of cultures and languages, as they were constantly in contact and being interchanged as shared colonies of the Spanish Empire. The experience in the U.S. labor also created another shared historical link. Mexican and Filipino farm workers united and organized labor union known as the UFW and protests in the 1960s, led by Cesar Chavez and Larry E. Leon for better agricultural labor practices in California. The segregated work camps and salaries that racially divided the groups and pitted them against each other was overcome in their shared experiences as farm workers of color and segregation.
Rudy Guevara Jr. wrote an article about the Mexipino experience of growing up Mexican and Filipino in San Diego. His story is about a new culture which blurs the lines between what it means to be Mexican and what it means to be Filipino. He calls his grandmother Abuelita and his grandfather Tata. Rudy, like many Mexican and Filipino immigrants, speaks a language that is derivative of or influenced by another language. Both the Philippines and Mexico have been subjected to Spanish colonization. This colonization influenced Tagalog in the Philippines and language in Mexico. It is partially the reason as to why Tagalog became genderized. Both languages in Mexico and in the Philippines make use of this gender role. In a way, Spanish colonization has used language to create cultural similarities between these two places. Furthermore, Spanish colonization has resulted in another connection. Mexicanos in America often grew up eating flan, chicharrón, tamales, adobo, bagún, or pancit. Spanish colonization has created a cultural experience universal enough between Filipino and Mexican people that they are able to use food and language as a shared cultural experience in America.
It was always unknown why Mexican and Filipinos share similar interests, even though many individuals may find their connection through the colonizational time. It further extended of the experience they shared. But looking back through time, we have recognized the similarities between Mexicans and Filipinos. It is no surprise why they are so similar. It all began through history that shaped a similar lifestyle of language, delicious food, culture, and the same religious belief of Mexican and Filipinos. We can appreciate the similarities as well as the differences of these two cultures share. We have a better understanding why these two cultures intersect. From colonization to exploitation of labor, this had begun a share of cross-cultural connections, historical and cultural similarities throughout history until today. It has even created a new generation of communities, just like the one in San Diego, who are called Mexipino. History has given us knowledge of why these two cultures are similar and how it is part of today's life. It still makes history and how it is important as we see how it is shaping a new community of people.